Okay, so what you guys have so far in your outline is hopefully everybody at this point, if you're staying on track, you filled in these next three rows. So you have the taconics in here, you have the event in bullet form, and you have the corresponding evidence here. Okay, so everybody should have that to the same level of detail as the one I had above. You've got the Akkadian orogeny, that's Abaddon. And if you're confused on those, you got to go back and look at that video that's up on Classroom. You've got the evidence here, and then you've got Pangea, what they call the Alleghenian orogeny here. So this is Pangea. So those are your three mountain building events. And that's all the mountain building events that are left. You're done with mountain building events, and you have evidence here as well. Okay, so for today, tomorrow, you're going to do two things. You can do it anywhere in this outline. But in the next row, what you're going to do here is the rifting of Pangea, so the separation is going to come next. So this is the next section, will be your rifting. And then this is where you're going to add more evidence from a new packet, okay? Okay, and then the other piece, the other diagram, is the Ice Age. So you can decide whether you want to stick the Ice Age in this row here, or you want to insert it down kind of in this section down here. You're going to add more stuff to these rows next week. Okay, so don't worry that you'll have a gap here. So the rifting, what you'll have to do is just like the other day. So start with the slides. Okay, so here's Pangea comes apart. Extract what you can from the bullets here. So you have your rifting here. And if you look at the picture, here's Africa going here, North America. There's the mountains that formed from the collision of Pangea. And this is what we call the successful rift right here. That's the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so the rifting, what happens is if you look at kind of this picture here, here's the rift that succeeded. Okay, so this is all in the events part of it. That's the successful rift is going to become the Atlantic. So this is where you're going to start to discuss the Atlantic opening up. And the Atlantic can be in your evidence also because that exists today as a result of Pangea splitting apart. So you get a diagram here. Here's the rift basin forming. The lava's coming out of these cracks here. And then that successful rift forms that basin, which eventually will fill with water from elsewhere on the earth and become your ancient ocean, would be the Atlantic Ocean in this case. Okay, all that stuff has to go in to that row of the outline. Okay, now the evidence, you can extract evidence from here. So here it's going to talk about the rift basin. You don't have to discuss the East African Rift Valley. That's just an example of the current rift valley that's happening today. So you can extract stuff from here about the rift basins that formed. So this is all evidence here. The rift basins that formed when Pangea rips apart. Okay, there's 2 pages to this section. It's actually fairly short. And then here in this section, it's going to talk about the Atlantic opening up. That would serve as evidence. So this is also evidence in this part here of the rifting of Pangea. Okay. Now the other piece, here's where it gets a little tricky, is there's also evidence from the trip that we saw of this rifting. We saw that at our first stop when we got off the bus at the Connecticut River Valley. That wasn't the successful rift, that was the failed rift. Okay, but that's got to be incorporated here. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back to Classroom and you open up your slideshow. I made it purple here, so it says sediments reading. Okay, this is the reading we're going to spend some time next week in. So we're going to go into this reading now. Okay, and you're going to go to pages 4 and 5 of that sediments reading. Okay, for now, ignore everything on 1, 2, and 3. That'll come next week. Don't worry about it. But in pages 4 and 5 of that sediments reading, okay, you saw evidence of Pangea rifting. Okay, the Holyoke basalts, those are the pillow lavas you saw and touched along the sides of the Connecticut River. Those existed, why? Because of the rift. So this is evidence. So you're going to put that in your evidence column. And then this section here where it says Connecticut River Valley, this is the failed rift. So here is the failed rift, but you'll incorporate that into your evidence. Okay? So this is where we're starting to bring in some stuff from the trip into your outline. Okay? So for that part, you'll have to dig into, for the first time, the next reading. Okay? The Ice Age is pretty straightforward. So the Ice Age is the other section. So you guys have a drop tomorrow. So with the Ice Age, okay, same thing. Start with this here. It's titled Coastal Plain Building, but for ease of your understanding, you might just want to call it Ice Age. So this is all after the Atlantic opens up, and what it says, it's called a passive margin. Passive thing, peaceful. So since that rifting, things have been peaceful, per se, along the east coast of North America. No more collisions, no more rifting, etc. The biggest event since then is what we call the Laurentide Ice Sheet. That's the glacier that came down from Canada during the last Ice Age. And as the glacier advanced, it covered Massachusetts and New York, which would have been right there. Okay? So you'll incorporate the Ice Age event either at the bottom of that outline, or you can just put it in a row. And here's where you have to take another piece of the trip. Okay? This picture here, and I'll show you where you can get this. When these glaciers melted back, okay, they left behind two what we call glacial lakes. One was called Glacial Lake Albany, and the other was called Glacial Lake Hitchcock. If you kind of know your geography, here's Massachusetts. This is the Connecticut River Valley right here. This is the Hudson River here. Okay, so when the ice melted, it left behind these two giant lakes. Envision the Great Lakes of today. We know water flows downhill, and rivers, they flow into what? Into oceans. So eventually what happened is these glacial lakes opened up at the bottom right here. All the sediment was weathered away, and all the water in those lakes started to flow out into the ocean and would have made the two rivers you saw on the trip. So the Hudson and the Connecticut were made, or serve as evidence for your Ice Age around here. So where do I find that information? So when you do your Ice Age, this reading will talk about things like Florida and stuff like that over here. You don't need that. Okay, we're not interested in Florida. Okay, it'll talk a little bit here about the Ice Age, so you can get a little more information about the Ice Age here. So don't worry about the Florida stuff. Focus on the Ice Age. You can focus a little bit about after Pangea, how the Atlantic opens up. It'll talk about it here. Okay, and there's a little bit more about the Ice Age, but what you'll do is you'll go into that other reading now, and this section here, it'll say pages 6 and 7 of that same reading, you find the rifting stuff. That's where you can pull out information about the Connecticut River Valley, and then on the next page, the Hudson River Valley. Okay, those two valleys are the main pieces of evidence of the Ice Age that you're going to discuss in your paper. Okay, so you'll have to pull out evidence from these two and events from these two. Okay, so it's a bit of work, but you guys have a drop. So you have 2 days to kind of dig into that. So just remember, you're going to have to go into that sediments reading in your guide now to pull out evidence for these next two events. Okay,